I'm Dan, I'm an alcoholic. And I've completed these steps with the help of a Big Book Step Study sponsor and my higher power. It's a great day to be sober, I was thinking when I was standing out there today. It's beautiful out. And actually, it's easier to be sober once you get sober than it is to use. You know, I didn't wake up today hungover and having to make phone calls. I wasn't sick. I didn't have to go think, where am I going to get drugs today? All I had to, I got a nice place to live. I got a car. I got 4 kids. I got 6 grandchildren. They're all talking to me. They all actually like me. So I'm very grateful. And before I read or speak at anything, I always go to page 53. I love reading this. When we became alcoholics, crushed by a self-imposed crisis, we could neither postpone or evade. We had to fearlessly face the proposition that God is everything or else he is nothing. God either is or he isn't. What was our choice to be? Now, I was very lucky. I got sober when I was 24. And I got the part about don't drink, go to meetings. I really did. And I was but I didn't get that part. The whole spiritual part of AA just went right over my head. I was a tough guy. I didn't need that, but I certainly couldn't drink. Thank God that when I got here, I got that. Because I was such a violent drunk that people thought there was something wrong with me, that I was mentally ill. I was the type of guy that would sit at a bar and we'd be drinking and I'd turn around and hit you over the head with a bottle for no reason. I thought I was a nice guy, but in hindsight, I almost killed my first wife in a blackout. I was the oldest of 8 kids. We used to have Friday night at the fights at my house, my father and I. Can remember my sisters lining up the stairs, going upstairs, watching and the cops would be called and all that. But when I was drinking, you really, really, really had to try to go to jail. You had to be completely screwed up before they locked you. When I was drinking, there was no such thing as domestic violence. Drunk driving was like a traffic offense. I must have had 15 of them. And it was a whole different world back then. If I was ever drinking today, I wouldn't be here, trust me. I'd be one of those guys in the 5 o'clock news, 17 drunk drivers, But I was blessed that my father got into AA when I was 24. And after all those horror shows I just talked about, I waited around for a while. I had one last debacle, and I was ready. I was so happy when I walked in the doors. I was 24. I was working as a garbage collector. I had an old Army jacket and hair down to my shoulders. I went to this guy's office because my father told me to go see him. And he said, let's go tonight. It was a meeting in Sherman. And I said, I can't. I got to go home and take a shower. He goes, well, I'll wait for you. Shit. Then I told him, I'm going to have to smoke pot on the weekends. Because I had just gotten divorced, and I didn't think it was possible for me to ever have a relationship with anybody sober. I couldn't imagine going through a weekend without drinking or having something. So I was humble enough to say, well, I'll go, but I'm going to smoke weed. And he said, well, today's Wednesday. Let's worry about what you're going to do on Saturday. And I haven't had a drink since. And I've been very fortunate in that regard because I got the fact that I couldn't drink. I didn't get the spiritual part, but the absence of alcohol in my life allowed me to do a lot of things. I'd actually already graduated from college, but that's the college I went to. All you had to do was be Irish and know how to sign your last name, and they let you in. It wasn't Holy Cross. But I hadn't graduated. Well, I had finished college, but I hadn't graduated because I owed them money. So I managed to pay that off, and I became a college graduate. I got a good job in construction. I moved out of Framingham. I was in upstate New York. It was so great. When I got in trouble, it was on the front page of the newspaper. So everybody in Framingham knew all about my past. And it was so nice to go to a place where nobody knew me. And I met a guy in AA. I moved in with him. And then fast forward 21 years after that, okay? And I was a tough guy in certain ways. I got a graduate degree. I worked at making cars at GM in Framingham for 10 years. When I was picking up, I was a trash collector. I mean, when I was drinking, I was picking up as a trash collector. And I managed to, I got a graduate degree. I went to law school full-time and worked full-time. I had 2 kids. And on the outside, things were good, but I had nothing inside of me. Without God, I just turned into, the best way to put it is I truly believed I was a nice guy surrounded by assholes. I really did. And my poor second wife, we were absolutely incompatible. There's no way in God's green earth we should have ever even talked to each other. But I met her at an AA meeting, and I thought she was, I thought she was hot, and I was very physically attracted to her. And so now, 21 years later, her and I have 3 kids, and she's doing heroin. And you know what? I took out a flamethrower and destroyed my life sober. It was insane. I was 18 years sober. I was suicidal. I had all these things. I thought I was so good, and I just couldn't figure it out. I did not have the steps. I didn't know what was wrong with me. And I just thought my life was over sober. But for some reason, I didn't drink. I knew that if I drank, I would kill somebody. That's the way I was. I got that. So I went to Big Book Step Study, and they wouldn't let me speak. And I told the chairperson, the most arrogant man you ever saw get shut off at a Big Book Step Study. I told the chairperson to go F himself. I'm not shitting you. You know, in my defense, it was a men's meeting, okay? So then I got hurt, and I had a spiritual experience with Percocet. So for those of you, and I'm one of them to a certain extent, that AA is for alcoholics, but unfortunately I got to tell the truth, okay? I can't lie to you and say I've been sober 39 years, because I haven't. So I had a spiritual experience on Percocet, and with the drugs, I wasn't violent doing drugs. The only thing that drugs did to me, it turned me into a sleazy bastard. It really did. I was a criminal defense lawyer, so as you could imagine, you know, I don't know. I've heard of guys getting arrested for stuff they told at AA meetings, but let's. I'll just tell you that it's a good. I'm very lucky that I'm still a lawyer today. Okay, and people would call me up and they have no money. They'd say, "Dan, I got 200 perks." I'd say, "Come on down." So, in any event, after several trips to the asylum, I came back to Big Book Step Study, and I said to that guy, "Do you remember me?" He goes, "I'll never forget you." and I got to speed this up. And him and I are good friends today. So I went to Big Book again. I was much more humble. My sponsor was an electrician. The only thing I remember about the third step is I kneeled down, I held his hand, and he's the most calluses of any man I ever know. I didn't feel shit. But you know what? I stayed because I wanted to say I was writing. For some reason, I got it into my head. If I could say I was writing, I wasn't a complete scumbag loser like I felt I was. So, but I didn't stay straight. I was the coffee maker at the, they used to know when I was using because I was a very responsible coffee maker. I'd get a box of Joe from Dunk's and I'd leave it there. So if the coffee was there and I wasn't, everybody knew I was using. But my sponsor was patient. I eventually got straight. I completed the steps. I had a spiritual experience. And this reading here today says that if, I'm not sure, I'm getting old. I can't remember stuff anymore. But I just had a cognitive test and I'm not senile, so, all right. If we can answer to our satisfaction. So what are we answering? Well, we have to go back to the last paragraph of the 5th step. Basically what it says, have you done a good 5th step? Did you leave anything else out? Did you tell every one of your resentments, fears, and sex conduct to another human being? And I had done that, and I could say that the first time in my life, I didn't have any buts. I didn't have to exaggerate. I didn't have to say, well, I did it the way I was supposed to do it. It was pretty sad. I was 40, I think at the time I was 45, but I finally completed something exactly the way it was supposed to be done, as someone, and I had nothing to do with it. My ego stayed out of it. I didn't have any choice with my sponsor. I used to tell him how great I was. He said, Dan, wait a minute. I'll give you credit, you're sober today and you're doing the right thing, but you would be supposed to be doing this stuff all along. Most of the world takes care of their children, goes to work. They don't throw furniture around the house or swear at their wife, or the kids don't wake up with their parents nodding out at the kitchen table, you know. So the fact that you're not doing that anymore is nice, but it doesn't make you special. So then I did afterwards I went to a chapel. I took it out of my glove compartment. I didn't have a shelf available. I took the book and I sat there and I was completely at peace and ease with God, and I did 6 and 7. It was the easiest steps I ever did because I was so psyched. Can you imagine? Within a very short period of time, I finished 4, 5, 6, 7, and I was on 8. It was like, wow, I felt like an AA superstar. But I did have that spiritual experience. I really did. And so what are they asking here? They're asking us, are we able to ask God to remove our character defects? Do we want Him to? First of all, do we want God to remove them? And a lot of people will tell you only take the things that are in His way of other, but I could never figure out any character defect that was good for me. I want Him to take them all. And at that point, what I realized what my defects were, was that I was not a nice guy surrounded by assholes. I was a very sick man, and I didn't know the truth. I was like a kid coming out of the forest, like, wow, this is what I really am, and it was not pretty. But because I had done the steps and I'd had a sponsor, I didn't feel bad about it. I felt sad about it. But if you're going to be guilty and overwhelmed by shame for the things you've done, what's the point? You got to let it go. But like my sponsor said, you got to realize that you're not doing anything special. And my eyes were open. I had to make I thought, see, I was compared to my ex-wife and I, she was a much worse addict than I was. I could maintain more than her. So I thought I was better. I thought I was the better father and all that stuff. And that was not true. So I knew what my character defects were. I would tell a lie. I wasn't capable of letting anybody see who I am. I always pretended. I didn't, and I'm not going to list all my defects. That's not what this is. But I was ready to let them go. And then I asked God to remove them. To a certain extent, He has, but as long as I keep in touch with what I read earlier here about God either is or He isn't, because I still struggle with that. Deep down, my default mode is F you, you know what I mean, I'm in charge, I know everything, but that's not true. So I've gone on for long enough here, but I will tell you that this process works. It absolutely works. I was a broken guy at 45. I had 4 kids I didn't appreciate it. I had a career I hated. I had an ex-wife that I hated. I hated everybody, and I thought I was a loser. But today, all my kids think I'm okay. My oldest daughter, when I told her that I was sorry for her childhood and all the bad things that happened, and that I was she wrote me a letter and told me what an asshole I was. But example of how this program works, I made amends to her too good, because she now has 5 kids, and I'm like, Grandpa Dan, Grandpa Dan, Grandpa Dan. She can't, I can't get away from the girl now. She likes me so much. So all of this is possible if you can follow a few simple instructions. Thank you.